I want you to imagine a world in which you'd be able to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, climate change, by creating a perfect replica of the Earth on a computer and simulating the impact of small human actions and behaviors on the planet 30 years from now. You'd be listening to this and thinking, Andrea, that's impossible. This sounds more like Black Mirror than the real world. And I get you. But if I would tell you that AI company NVIDIA is creating a digital twin of the Earth called Earth 2, whereby combining accelerated computer with physics-informed machine learning at scale on the largest supercomputing systems today, it will provide actionable weather and climate information at regional scales. Would you believe me now if I say that we're building the future much faster than you think in the energy sector and beyond? And in order to discuss exactly all of this now, we have invited an amazing guest to be here with us in this first episode of RePerception, a great leader in the energy sector that developed a universal framework for smart city construction based on Rubik's Cube and already said that data is the new water. Yeah, we host today Edwin Diender, the Chief Innovation Officer, Global Energy Business Unit, Enterprise Business Group at Huawei, where he's been covering leadership positions over the last 11 years, an advisor to many companies, not least the great IA Business School, and self-described blue ocean strategist and forward thinker. I love all this. He's joining from Bangkok now. Welcome, Edwin.
Thank you, Andrea, for having me. And wow, what an introduction. That was quite energetic, to stay on the topic.
Definitely. And with you, of course, we're talking about energy. That's exactly the point. A big synergy between, your profile and the topic of today. And so amazing to have you on the show, Edwin. And before we start off our conversation, I also wanted to remind the audience that this podcast is produced by my company, ANDREA IORIO Keynotes, in partnership with Inevitable.education, the leading global platform to upskill devs and engineers for blockchain and Web3. That aims at providing to you leaders the right toolkit to navigate and master the world of Web3 and AI. And here's your host, Andrea Iorio. I'm an Italian keynote speaker to more than 100 companies per year, focusing on digital transformation, leadership, and innovation, and a best-selling author of 2 books in Portuguese. Because although I'm based out of New York City, I worked over the last 10 years in Brazil as the head of Tinder, as chief digital officer at L'Oreal, and I'm the official host of NVIDIA Brazil's podcast, entirely about AI, and a columnist at the MIT Technology Review. I count more than 100,000 followers across social media, mainly on LinkedIn, and you can ping me there or through my website, andreaiorio.com, anytime feedbacks, complaints, or, well, they're welcome praises. And Edwin, let's get now direct to our conversation. I'm eager to explore many of the concepts that you cover and that you have experience on. And I wanted to start off directly from a concept that you strongly proposed on social media, at work, on the internet, that really caught my attention since, our first chat months ago, which is the Energyverse. In an interview, you said that the idea behind the Energyverse is energy that is as visible and as available as information and communications are. So what do you mean by that? And how would you describe the Energyverse to our listeners?
Well, I come from a high-tech computing and communications, not only background, but also I work for one of the largest companies in the world that actually provides equipment and systems and services for that. So imagine this. So here's the analogy between energy and information, or data, if you like. Think of a platform that stores data in analogy to a platform that stores energy. Data and information is available everywhere and anywhere, no matter what device, as long as the device is connected, information and data is accessible and information and available. So from data storage, we have data mobility, data distribution, data analytics. So just remove the word data or information and replace it with energy. We got energy mobility, energy storage, energy distribution, energy availability, energy insights, energy analytics.
It's as if
that's where the analogy sits.
It's as if you are narrowing down to the smallest particle. In data might be binary sequences. With energy will be molecules and atoms, and basically you're creating a framework to just replicate with energy what has been created already with data, which is at the moment, and especially in Web3 on the blockchain, possibly ubiquitous, persistent, transparent, accessible. Let's say that, for example, I'm an energy generation company. Today, I do not exactly know 100% that atom of energy, if it has been generated from a renewable source. I know that renewable sources generate energy for me, but I'm not able to distinguish that. Do you think that through the Energyverse, or through this concept, and with current technologies, we can explore them more, we might be arriving to that point?
Well, yes, 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 and the fourth one, yes. It's all yes, yes, for sure. Here's the straightforward and down to earth explanation. I'm sure that, well, not sure, but a couple of your listeners and people who are watching this, who are in this energy domain or in the energy industry, have heard about opportunities for the power grid, the electricity network. Grid in the world of energy and in the world of the energy industry is no more than an infrastructure or a network. So the power network, the electricity network. There is a concept called smart grid, which is where and how digital and computing and communication technologies are being used to optimize and to move the grid higher up the value chain. And for most organizations, that is not only their goal, that's also their target and their endpoint. As long as the grid becomes more intelligent, the information within the grid is accessible and able to be analyzed and so on and so forth. And for me, that's not an endpoint. Huh. So think of this, so how do I push, or how do I view the Energyverse? For me, transforming the conventional power grid, not towards a smart grid, but via smart grid and intelligent connectivity into what I envision a world wide web of energy, or an energy internet, an internet of energy. Not from information, we already have that. Not for communications, we already have that. But for energy, a world wide web of energy. For me, that is something to aspire, something to go for, something to achieve, something to keep in mind, and certainly something that's very realistic, specifically in the way you just described it earlier. To me, that is what the Energyverse is about.
Especially because, Edwin, when we look at, smart grids, basically powered by AI that is able to better distribute energy, we are talking, though, still about grids that are related and first of all, centralized, and therefore, basically owned or at least operated by specific companies. And when we look at Web3 is a decentralized web where, to me, when possibly, and I wanted to confirm that, when you look at the future, you look at, this kind of like Energyverse as being decentralized, possibly built on a blockchain, either centralized technology where basically companies, of course, plug in and are stakeholders to it, but eventually where blockchain is the one that regulates the transactions through smart contracts. Do you think blockchain and Web3 technologies play a role in decentralizing it, or you still see a phase where it will be centralized and any of the big energy players will be kind of like responsible for this Energyverse?
There's a lot of analogy to other kinds of infrastructures, other kinds of networks, other kind of concepts, and other kinds of how things are played out and rolled out. For example, with mobile virtual network operators, they don't own the mobile network, but they do a lot of mobility related items when it comes to information and application. You being head of Tinder in your past, I'm sure you get where I'm going with this. The electricity network itself is not very different from an architecture, from a technical viewpoint, and even from technical items. It's a copper wire cable, right? The electricity network. It's actually very old. Well, not old. It's a little more than 100 years old, but it's exactly the same age as the other copper wire cable that we're using today for this remote session that we're having, right? And this copper wire cable that we're using for this remote session has been transformed already into what today is considered the a global communications and a global computing network. And the electricity network has the same potential, but needs to transform as well. It needs to go from mechanical to maybe analog and digital to more IP-based, software-defined networking and software-defined features for the network are very common principles, technically speaking, for computing networks and communication networks. A software-defined principle for a software-defined power grid would help that power grid to be more efficient in their daily operations, to create more insights, and to be able to better understand where is the power needed the most, where is my electricity going today, and why is it? And this goes further than insights. The mobile networks in the past were also not able to do that. That is why sometimes if there is a big car crash at the middle of a junction or somewhere in the middle of a street, and everybody starts tweeting and starts getting their Facebook messages going on and taking pictures of it, the mobile network with maybe a couple of hundred people at the corner of a street couldn't take that because it wasn't designed for that, right? That mobile network needed additional features and functions to be able to deal with the vast amount of people in a certain corner of a city where the mobile capacity would be diverted to or assigned to. And in computing networks and in communication networks, also in mobile networks, these are very common software-driven technical principles that help the network do that. And if you think about that then into a electricity network, the transitional stages where we are, the potential is very high, but the steps to go that way needs to be played out. I guess most of it will be done in a very hybrid way, a mix and a match still. Interoperability and coexistence are some words that I guess will lead into this very much. But at some point, things have migrated, things have been upgraded, things have maybe even forklift upgraded or replaced into something new. If you think of the new power grid, so the power grid of the future, and where researchers, but also where power companies themselves already are working from, is with the principle of digital twins or intelligent twins. And in your introduction, you mentioned about a digital twin of Earth. The tiny version of that would be a digital twin of an area or a power grid or maybe a substation or a transmission line. And from there is where the ideas are coming from. From there, from a digital point of view, driven by digital insights, there comes a point where the ideas are so strong that it feeds into an investment. There will be funding and financing for it to make it work physically. But the ideas are infused from the digital world. And I think the moment we're there, I think that is what the Energyverse actually is. That digital version that helps us understand how to do something better in a physical way, including expansion into urban areas or not. What does it mean if there are multiple devices connected to my electricity network that is not designed to take care of all these multiple devices, but it needs to stay up? What does it mean if there is energy that is generated from hydro or solar or wind or what have you, where the current network is not designed to deal with the input of all that? You know, that gives you a bit of a leadway.
And also, you know, beyond all this, it really dramatically reduces the cost of experimentation and of testing. So I think also, you know, wireless network providers, or at least 5G providers, are using now digital twins. If I'm not mistaken, Ericsson is trying to do that through the creation of digital twins of cities where they put on 5G networks. And I think more and more we'll see that in the energy sector. And taking a segue from here, I'll actually make an attempt to crack the way you think about these concepts, because I'm very curious, and I think our listeners are as well, on the way that a leader like you, a technology leader, thinks about this concept. Like, how did you come up with that concept of Energyverse? I mean, like, I'd like to understand how you as a leader are able to kind of like look at future trends and make tangible something that does not exist yet, because it is really a unique concept that I only heard from you. Like, what's your suggestion to leaders to be more open to future trends and not just stick to their current beliefs? Again, when we look at the energy sector, but not only, most of the big players are trying to replicate their past successes. But the problem is that the world is changing, technology is changing, the customer is changing, the end consumer is changing. And if these companies and therefore their leaders do not change the way they look at the future and open themselves to it, I think they might become more and more obsolete. Like, how's the way that you look at future trends, and how does your mind work on that? It's a tough one.
I wouldn't. Oh man, I wouldn't know how my brain works. You can ask my wife, and she probably says it's not working at all. You know?
It's not working. The only way might be creating a digital twin of it, but I think that's also still too futuristic.
Right, right. Yeah, it is. Well, so I'm not going to go into how my brain works, but I can tell you a little bit about how these things come to me in a certain way. It's usually from an area or from a situation where you have no idea that it has a linkage. In my past, before I moved into this global energy business unit that I'm part of, I was supporting a company with initiatives in the world of digital transformation for smart cities. And smart city not as an item to make a city smarter, but thinking of a city as an organism. A network of smart cities creates a smart region, just like a network of smart regions makes a smart nation, and a network of smart nations makes, whatever goes on in the world. It's all about smart networks. It's not about one. It's not about one or one. A long time ago, I already stepped away from the concept that we should move into ideas of having a project, because in digital transformation, the digital journey for education, for example, the pandemic has shown very well how a single school could maybe have a fantastic idea about how to provide remote learning to their students, because the students are not able to go to school. And the teacher is also not able to go to school. We need to teach remotely. And using digital technologies for that works very well for that school. But if that school has it up and running in such a profound way that it's not that far away for that school to say, I'm going to open up my digital services to every other school around me. And I don't care where they come from. I don't care if they belong to my consortium, if they're a branch of the university campus that I'm part of. I am an educational institution. My core function is to share knowledge. But what better way to do that? By allowing my teachers to share their knowledge and to teach kids all over the world, for example, by using mobile integration and mobile technologies. Now, that is something that I've been part of for a long, long time already. So at some point in time, and when I transferred from the previous department that I'm part of to the global energy business unit that I'm part of, I was confronted with almost similar talking points, similar concepts and similar ideas, but none of them were thinking of a power plant as a branch. None of them were thinking of a power generation location, a site, right? A power generation site that is doing something digital that helps them be more efficient in their daily operations. And the moment engineers need to do maintenance work, out comes the paper clipboard, pen, they got to shut down kilovolt and whatever connectivity layers because someone needs to climb up a tower, versus I'm going to use a drone. I'm going to use my HoloSense 3D goggles, what VR. Have you. I'm not going to climb up this 100-meter high tower. Why would I do that? The drone can do that. And a drone can do it not only better than me from a looking point of view, because, the 4K or the 8K or the 16K high definition cameras in a drone has a much better eyesight than I have. It doesn't get tired, all that stuff. So at some point, out came the metaverse. And for a long time, I've also been thinking of, everything that generates information, everything that deals with information, computing and communications, is nowhere if there's no power. That's why one of the solutions that we have as a computing and a communications company is an uninterrupted power supply. It's a power generator, and the power generators that we provide are autonomous. That means they got solar panels and a battery pack. That means in the daytime, the solar panels are picking up the bright light, converting it into energy, storing it in the battery pack. And that means the more than 11,000 islands of Indonesia who have grids on their island, diesel generators, to give them power. But from a mobile connection point of view, the engineer on island number 1 knows exactly what goes on via mobile technology, technically speaking and mechanically speaking, at the power plant or at the diesel generator in island number 2. It's a 30-minute boat ride away, but still So from an information point of view, the whole electricity network knows what goes on, but from a management and maintenance and so on and so forth, it doesn't. So that's where basically my thought process comes in play, where I really apply one thing, and it's not me. I copied it. I copied it from a guy who knows very well how it works. It's Mr. Guy Kawasaki. You can Google his name. And he is the one who has a great insight to share, which he does, about what is innovation and how does innovation work and why is it not scaling if you try to do better what you already do best from what you already have. Mr. Einstein once said, if you do what you always do, you get what you already have.
True.
If you're looking for, and if you're looking for version 2.0 or Web 3.0 of your Web 2.0, what you get is a version that has less bugs. What you don't have is a completely new version that's completely redesigned, that flips the whole cases around. So here's the thing, jump a curve, which is what Mr. Guy Kawasaki taught me. Well, not me, that's what I picked up from his wordings and his speeches. Jump the curve, preferably 2 curves, which is what I always do and what I've always done, but no one ever told me how that works. It was Mr. Guy Kawasaki who got me the insights that says, what I'm doing is, already for a long time, I don't take the existing status quo as something to move further. I'm closing my eyes first. If I have the chance, if we have an opportunity, if there's something that we have to aspire, like this World Wide Web of energy, if this is something that we can aspire, then let's sit back for a while and think what would that be? How would that look like? And the metaverse is doing that. The metaverse is only missing one point. And the point is the visualization of energy. And that's what the Energyverse is adding to the metaverse. So the visualization of energy. And that is came to me by working in a technical company on computing and communications that have gone through this stage for an analog fixed copper wire network, which today is the global communications and the global computing networks. That's why I started in the introduction when you asked me with the analogy of energy, electricity similar to information services, information management, information storage, information distribution. I've referred to, and I still do, refer to electronic vehicles as a tablet on wheels. And that is your bridge. That's your bridge. And that is where I thought, if it's an app store that makes an electronic car more interesting to choose from than the drivetrain or the horsepower, then at some point, jumping a curve and thinking of something else and the metaverse, and I thought, what can I do with the metaverse? What is possible in the metaverse? Well, if I'm an electrical engineer and I'm responsible for a power plant, or I'm responsible for power in a city, and this city is visible in the metaverse, there is events going on in the metaverse in this freaking city. Where is my energy going in this city? How do I use all that energy in that city in the most efficient way? That is only possible if I'm able to underlie the metaverse with a foundation. And I couldn't find a word for it. So I started doing something else. I completely stepped out of my comfort zone. I started reading into something about, I think this was the time frame where Elon Musk was sending these things to Mars and what have you, and NASA had a new thing, and the Hubble telescope was replaced with something else, and we were getting images back. And as I clicked wrong. I clicked on a space age kind of page where the Energyverse itself was being described, because I thought, if we have a universe and we have metaverse, where's that coming from and how does that link? We also have that with energy in the universe, or where all the universes are connected into one universal system of stars.
Exactly.
And what have you. The mega version of atoms and molecules that you said before, because space is no more than a copy of the very tiny molecules and atoms and electrons and protons that we have inside of us. It's like that, right? Big, and then outer space, Earth, and then back in. But never mind. I came on a website that explained Energyverse. Energyverse in space science is all energy combined as one, and they had a visualization for it. And I thought, that's it. That's my word. But that's also my concept. It is all energy combined in a visualization, or visualized. I can see where energy sits how energy flows, where energy can be stored, how energy is being used. And in my work, not my daily work, but in all my work, I find these kind of analogies and these kind of visualizations very easy for me to speak. When I do a keynote speak and I need to explain it, that is how the universal framework for smart city construction came forth, using a cube. And not so much the cube itself, because everybody knows this Rubik cube, but nobody knows really what it came forth of. And Mr. Rubik wanted to create a structure. Actually, he wanted to visualize a structure that allows pieces to move independently without breaking that structure. And the best way to show that is with this cube. So it's not about the squares, not the 9 squares or the 27 small cubes that make the 3x3 cube. It is the wireframe that is holding these different pieces together. That wireframe, if you visualize that wireframe,
it's
like
the wireframe of a smart city.
Then,
you got to create it.
That's your grid.
Model for
that is your grid.
That's exactly
that is your infrastructure. So that is your metaverse if you're talking about metaverse. But if you think about this wireframe as the electricity going back and forth, so not computing going back and forth, not communication going back and forth, but electricity going back and forth, then that's the visualization of the Energyverse.
And I like very much, Edwin, if I should take one lesson from all what you shared, or at least our listeners and leaders can take a lesson from what you shared, is that if you simplify complex concepts that are not related to, as you mentioned, Guy Kawasaki's, like, innovation does not necessarily come from what we have now and just, improving it, complexifying it, but it is really looking beyond and sometimes, like giving a much larger step and going into other orbits, right? If we take this space analogy, you will find it hard to explain to other people why you're doing that, right, and what is this technology.
Right.
And so if you were to kind of like, let's say, describe the Energyverse as this, universe of interconnected atoms of energy where everything flows, is one thing. If you say, if you use the word Energyverse, it will stick much more than just a broader definition that is very technical. And so I like that because I think it very much
like a smart meter.
Exactly. And the Rubik's Cube analogies as well, very, very nice, because people know it, and if they associate it with an extremely complex concept, they will find it easier to understand, such as the smart city framework. And so I like these as lessons for that. And on a segue to this, I really already wanted to understand a little bit of the work that you guys at Huawei do, in all of this, we can call it the construction of the Omniverse, but just, in creating these new frameworks, either for smart grids, either for, smart cities. They're very interconnected, and even like working on the concept of interoperability, because I think that's the big, obstacle to the creation of this, or at least, limitation. When we look at the metaverse itself, when we look at Web3 currently, we can better call it metaverses, because there's not really one open interoperable metaverse. There are many metaverses where you cannot really take the value that you have on one to the other. When it comes to, NFTs are the kind of like tokens that you can take from one to the other if they allow to. But let's say you buy a skin in a gaming metaverse on Fortnite or Roblox, you cannot really take it to the sandbox and so on. And if you buy land on Decentraland, it doesn't really mean you have a property on the other. So when it comes to the work that Huawei is doing related to all of this, what do you say that are the biggest projects or biggest highlights of your work on that?
Well, think of this as a hierarchy of needs, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
In a specific way, right? Because if back to the analogy of the cube, which is a bunch of squares, each square of a cube is the base of a pyramid, a hierarchy. So if we have 6 sides on a cube, we have 6 pyramids who are all folding, into each other. So if we unfold it, we can take this little piece and we open it up. It's a pyramid, a hierarchy of needs. It starts at the foundational level, the foundation, the building blocks, the components and the pieces that make this foundation, this baseline. From an energy point of view, that has to be a baseline that is very prone to its environment has to understand its energy usage and has to use it in the most optimized way. So one of the things that we do from the ground up is to look whether we're able to create components and whether we are able to create a mix and a match of these components into products, and whether these products can tap into solutions that solve real life problems, not only for the purpose what they're for, but also in a lowest form of energy consumption possible, or reusage of energy. And we do, and we have it. If you look at the smallest piece of equipment, tiniest, hard to see, you need a microscope almost to see it, which is a technical component, like a semiconductor, for example, or a chipset. And if you go from there all the way to supersized, multi-story car park, garage kind of buildings that are shared services center or data centers or what have you, and everything in between and everything in between from an equipment point of view, then you will understand how and where Huawei sits when it comes to interoperability, coexistence, standardization, and global standards. Performance above industry standard. Mind you, I'm very enthusiastic about the company that I represent. So what you hear me say comes from a very enthusiastic starting point. But I am not speaking to you from that enthusiasm point of view. I am repeating here what everyone can see in third-party analysts, international research papers, and so on and so forth.
It's objective.
Maybe even a weekly basis.
It's
so I'm
what's
repeating
really
here
happening.
I'm repeating here what these global analyst organizations and these research teams are publishing on a monthly basis or weekly sometimes. Performance above industry standard, the lowest on power consumption, the easiest to work with. Coexistence and interoperability are core traits of our solution stack. That means if you work with us and you envision with us, or we envision with you, or we have enabled your vision for something, you are able to choose a vendor that has portfolio that allows you to build it from the moment you dreamed it, so to speak. It doesn't mean you need to go back in your infrastructure first, replace a few things first, migrate from what you have to something else first, forklift upgrade first, then integrate first or second, before you have this second or third stage of what you have envisioned. In our case, we are really able to either overlay your existing information silos, and by overlaying technology and putting it on top of it, we're creating a new foundation. The information silos underneath, the more pillars under a foundation, the stronger that foundation becomes. That foundation is where we start from. So that's a foundation that is sitting on top of the information silos. That's the first one. Hierarchy. First one. If we go a little further up, we go to capabilities of this foundation. This foundation understands what it's there for. It could be a nationwide educational foundation for remote learning, bringing knowledge to rural areas, and so on and so forth. Offline and online, hybrid, learning, lifelong learning, mobile integrated, and so on and so forth. So the capabilities of this foundation. That sits with interoperability, coexistence, and that sits with application enablement. Then on top of that sits industry acceleration. Industry acceleration says, this is not just, as I mentioned earlier in the example of a school that is in the middle of the pandemic, setting up something digital for their students, but using that investment or using that way forward to share it with all the schools. Everyone, everywhere, worldwide, maybe even under the umbrella of the Ministry of Education, if you think of a hierarchy on that one. So if you think of that, it becomes an enabler for the whole industry. It means it creates more jobs. It taps into more opportunities. It allows us to move in the tip of this pyramid, in the tip of this hierarchy, where an operations center for intelligent operations sit, the brain and a nervous system of it.
It provides for scalability as well. And so I think it solves one of the big problems, because if you create these standards, and again, it gets back to the point of interoperability, you're able to scale knowledge, or you're able to scale solutions much more easily throughout the industry.
So coming back to your question, because that's what what is it that we do? This is from a technical point of view, how we innovate, what our research and development teams are coming up with, and how our factories and manufacturing and production sites are producing these products. What we're now able to do and what we're able to bring to place is to create what we call intelligent connectivity. That's something different from your smartphone has a SIM card and connects to a mobile network. That's not what it is. That is the enabler of it. But what intelligent connectivity means is, if you're using your smartphone as a student at home, kitchen Wi-Fi, to take your exam, supervision by your teacher, who is at Starbucks hotspot on his way home, where he will use kitchen Wi-Fi, right? This idea.
Yeah.
If you then think about how a teacher at Starbucks hotspot, a kid at home taking an exam or taking lessons, absorbing knowledge, and has the opportunity at hand by clicking on a computer screen where maybe even a virtual teacher like Mr. Richard Attenborough is going to explain to you, how the world works on a specific biological topic that's part of your biology class. And you understand it, you get it. You see the person sitting next to you at your kitchen table because of, I don't know, because of the metaverse, but at least that's the kind of thought.
Much more immersive and close.
So much more,
again.
so much more. And it is optimizing the connection for you. It knows what you're using it for, because your kid brother or your sister or your dad who sits next to you using the same kitchen Wi-Fi for their remote Zoom meetings, because mom is an accountant or dad is a lawyer or what have you, and is using the same kitchen Wi-Fi in a completely different way. That is what intelligent connectivity is about. So when we then think about solutions for education, smart education and intelligent connectivity for that, with smart classrooms or smart teaching, or the industrial IoT for smart manufacturing plants, where robotics are taking care of a whole bunch of stuff. Let me give you something else as an idea. A person who sits in a rig, who has to climb 100 meters up at a container terminal to take containers from ships that go into port and out, and they sit there for a shift of the whole week. They got a small house, they got a small apartment, with 8 or 9 apartments connected to this rig, versus that's a high risk job, right? All these heavy containers going back and forth, right? What if these operators of such a crane, an operator of such a crane, or an operator of a mine, that needs to go 200, 300, 400, 500 meters underground, back problems and what have you, they sit behind a computer screen, they got 2 joysticks, they still do the same work. They're still a crane operator, they're still a miner, they're still whatever, they're still doing something, but they're doing it from a safer sound. It's more intelligently connected via connectivity layers that are sitting on top of the existing digital information silos that they already have. That is what we're doing when it comes to using intelligent connectivity, computing and communication systems and services, and mobility for different industries, and enable these industries to accelerate on that, because only via digital transformation and with digital technology, you're able to do this faster in a much shorter time frame, and you're achieving, from an economical point of view, a point higher in the value chain. And earlier you talked something about it's lowering the cost. Well, an economic principle, I have a PhD in economics, my background is in economics, on sustainability and on sustainable business models. If the costs are lower, your profits are higher. So there's a profitability component in this. And this profitability component can be reused and reinvested into embarking further on using more digital, for example, in my domain, for energy transition, lowering our carbon footprint, getting more insights into where this footprint is going, carbon neutrality and net zero connectivity, that sort of thing, and digital inclusion. So the other thing that we do is we share this knowledge. We want to make sure that the digital divide and the knowledge gap is being shortened. So there's a lot of things that we do. Tech for good is what we call it, or tech for all, or tech for green, that sort of thing.
I love that. And I love also when two economists get together. I didn't know you had a background in economics. I do as well. And beyond the bigger and higher profits, there is another point, which is productivity, increases.
Yeah,
And with
very
productivity
much.
increase, exactly. Because I don't know whether it was Elon Musk, but, I've seen out there basically AI, or who is not the pessimist that thinks that AI will come and replace all of our, jobs. The understanding is it will replace those jobs, or at least change the nature of the, dangerous jobs, the boring jobs, the more, like less cognitive and more manual jobs that we can perform in other situations, or at least, it saves us time for us to think about more creative projects, think about the future, and so on. So I think you're bringing this note of optimism as well, and
Right.
positive, and taking like a jump here is, and also getting back to the example that you said about made about the professor and the student around education. It made me think of the current situation with GPT and everything that is going on with generative AI. And you also are a big expert of AI, up to the point that basically you in 2020 wrote an article about the 5 A's of AI.
Yeah.
And since now, again, AI is ubiquitous and it's already easily accessible. And I use this analogy of the student and the teacher, because we're up to a point where
Sure.
ChatGPT is able to write essays graded A, and almost undistinguishable to a teacher, which puts a lot of pressure on them. But anyhow, beyond that, what are the 5 A's of AI? And what does AI mean for us and for, I would say, the energy sector?
Well, a lot actually. But before going into the 5 A's of AI, the ability for machines and the ability for systems and services to not so much automate their activities. So automation is from mechanical to automating is the curve that we're jumping here. That would mean a computer can do it better and faster than someone or something more physical and more mechanical, especially when it comes to insights and manageability of it. So that's where AI is helping and enormously into understanding better how to do physical activities better and more efficient. Machine learning and that sort of thing, which is a subset underneath of that, and deep learning, are all components that for systems and services to help the system itself improve its computing power, its usage of algorithms. So that's a very common factor. If in the energy industry, for example, like a gas turbine or a coal burner that is using coal burning to generate energy and to distribute electricity and so on and so forth. The idea most of the time is that we need to disconnect from that, but I think we should automate that process. We should digitize that process, because with digital technologies, we are able to do such a burning of coal more efficiently, and that helps us with the transition. So I'm a very strong advocate for inclusion. We should not do this without the traditional energy industry. We should get them on board, because they already know. So that industry, or that part of the industry, knows very well what it takes when it comes to dealing with regulations, policies, frameworks. The only thing that they haven't done it yet is they haven't been able to transpose that towards, let's say, a world of new energy. But it doesn't mean it's a wrong framework. It means the framework needs to be fed in with something else. So inclusion for that. So coming to the point of the A's of AI, let's start with the fact, or at least for me, it's a fact. To me, it's a fact that artificial is not intelligent. Sorry, that intelligence is not artificial.
It's not artificial, yeah.
There's nothing artificial. There's nothing artificial about intelligence, no matter where it's from the brain of a child, your or my brain power, or a computer, or a smartphone, or a television, or what have you. Anything intelligent is not artificial.
True.
So the A of AI that says it's artificial intelligence, I would say, is not it.
Yeah, and I like to question that, because if we think about it, even the one that is defined as AI, therefore artificial, is actually trained and by human beings. That actually starting, can recognize photos, let's say. Well, it was human beings that have been, clicking and feeding the machine learning algorithm to create a pattern for them to understand. So I totally agree with you.
Sure. So it's not artificial. I also don't think it should be something on itself. I mentioned earlier, I don't like the idea of projects because projects have a clear beginning and a clear ending. They usually fit a time frame. That means at the end of the project, it's either also the end of the budget. A journey, digital transformation is a journey. It's a digital journey. Shouldn't go in a stop and go motion. It should go smooth. So it should be horizontal. That's why I'm speaking earlier about this foundation that overlays these information silos. It's not forklift upgrading because that's disrupting your street and my street when they need new street lighting and so on and so forth. So it's a program and an initiative. And I also talked about capabilities of this platform or for this information foundation, right? When I talked about the hierarchy. So coming back to it, for me, it's something that needs to be activated. It's like the brain of a child that learns by doing. That absorbs information. So the first A of AI to me is activated. It is something that can or has to be or already is or should be activated. You activate intelligence. It means you're making it use for you in whatever you have envisioned. For example, if we speak about envisioning a world wide web of energy, and I'm speaking to an electricity company with the world wide web of energy in mind, what would that lead into for your engineering department, for your research and development, for your innovation, for using computing technology? Let's then activate that computing power, which is activating intelligence. Then when it's activated, it is learning from it. It gives us insights. It gives us ideas forward. It shows us how certain investments from a digital twin point of view shouldn't be done in a certain area. We shouldn't cut trees for something or do vertical farming. We should do something else on the other side of the city because it has a wider impact and it creates more value. So that means it becomes more advanced. So from activating intelligence, the second A would be to advance that intelligence, which is you learn from it. You let it help you do better what you already do best. And then from there, it can go anywhere, basically. It can become autonomous. It can become well, whatever you can think of an A to B, but that's where my 5 A's of AIs are for. I'm sure in the publication of this podcast, you will share some of the links to this, but activate it, advance it, augment it. You can dress it up. You can add a few things, right? It becomes autonomous intelligence and so on and so forth.
And the last one, applied, which is really interesting because, sorry.
Well, it's not necessarily a sequence that you have to follow from the first to the last point. Whatever A comes in mind, applied intelligence, activate intelligence, automate that intelligence, advance from that intelligence. It's the key point is it's not artificial. That's the key point.
I like that, definitely, and this basically shows that there is a huge impact from AI, from Web3 technologies. Our conversation when it comes to the accelerated digitalization in the energy sector. There was a stats by Bloomberg.
We just found a new A. Accelerate intelligence.
Accelerated. It's true. It wasn't in the list. So we'll update the article and will become the 6 A's of AI, and at least I could contribute to one of them. But then, the impact on the market of these technologies is great, up to the point, again, Bloomberg estimates that, in 2 years from now, 2025, the digitalization market in the energy sector is poised to grow to $64 billion, which is a very big market for solutions. And so just to wrap it up here and let's I would like you to put yourself in the shoes of a leader of a traditional energy sector, which usually are your customers. And so as a final word to them, facing challenges that we just described, either, improving sustainability, improving access, improving efficiency, what would be the steps and, that these companies, let's say they are very traditional and they digitize some of their processes, but they did not open themselves to all of the solutions that are out there. What are the first steps that you think should be made to navigate such an unfamiliar environment, such as the world of Web3 and AI? And what are some recommendations that you would leave as a final note?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of learning points, not only in my past or in our past, but also in the past of the industry. There are many good examples of how and in what way digital journeys have improved daily operations, how digital technologies that have been applied help us do better what we already do best. One of the key learning points, of course, sits with a mutual vision. Mutual means not only the leadership team and the leaders in that team themselves, but all the stakeholders, a 360 view, not just your department or your team or your site, the whole value chain. You have to have a mutual vision. Then take that vision into a leadership team that not only has the execution power, right, the mandate to do so, but also have their personal ability to do so. They need to embrace this vision. Someone in a leadership team that is part of the execution, part of the people who are going to do it, needs to have this strong drive that it is going to somewhere. Not because it's a project that needs to be finished before the end of the month.
Yeah. Then, it must go beyond
That's not
that.
why we're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not why we're doing it. That's not why we're doing it. You need to have strong partnerships. So the third one would be partnerships.
Partnerships, because definitely we fall into the old status quo and doing things the old way. If the drive is not big enough, that takes us out of that inertia, right? It takes a lot of energy to actually get out of our comfort zone and our daily routines.
Exactly. So the idea would be to think of the power company of the future, or a future power company. Shared vision, mutual vision. A team that has the ability and the willingness to execute towards that larger, let's say, aspiration. A strong partnerships. Not within your own team and within your own company and within your own value chain, but also outside. Strong partnerships. Then a good set of funding and financing.
Yeah, that's very much true.
Not budget. Budget helps you maintain what you already have, because your budget is assigned to what you got. You're not going to use budget for something new. If you do that, you're on the wrong path. Your mutual vision is then not correct. Your mutual vision should be the budget is for what we already have. And we're not going to do projects anymore. We're going to do programs and initiatives. So what kind of initiatives can be funded? What kind of programs can be financed? Who is my funding and financing partner? Because the fifth step is plan the work and work the plan. Follow the vision, right? We're following the vision. We aspire a worldwide web of energy. We're not going to do a project with some budget to do something technical and mechanical and replace it for something digital, like a smart meter versus an analog meter. The idea of replacing an analog meter for smart meters is not because it is easier to read the digits of the meter. What it will help us understand better in a network of smart meters how and where our energy is being consumed and how we now need to optimize the delivery of that energy, the guarantee of that energy, the uptime and the quality of that energy. And that can only be done if we think of the power grid not as something that needs to move into a smart grid, because a smart grid is multiple smart meters. And that's not what it's for. We're transforming the conventional power grid via smart grid and by adding intelligent connectivity into something that we can aspire is a worldwide web of energy. And that journey needs a mutual vision, a strong team that is seeing it and willing to make it happen. Find it with the right partners who also see it, who share that same vision, where there's a funding mechanism and where there is a, plan the work for that and work that plan. Like a travel guide, not a roadmap, a travel guide.
Which is different, it's true. And to the funding part, I cannot agree more. Many times we just set a vision, very ambitious, and we in the budget, which is already a mistake you pointed out, we leave that, small line of extra funds that are for innovation, supposedly, and eventually it's, first of all, so low, and also results oftentimes are so intangible that projects that do not get approved because, oh, where's the ROI? There's no, short-term gains, and it's tough. We need, a longer-term vision. And as you mentioned, we need financing, not only budgeting. So that's, I think a lot
financing
of
what is it? Cost and pricing sits with budget.
Yeah, that's cost and pricing.
We are looking for values and benefits, and that sits with funding and finance.
Exactly. I like the vision here. New economy. Again, when two economies get together, new models rise in a 30 minutes discussion. That's amazing, Edwin. I really think that at least our listeners, well, beyond them, even me, we learned a lot from this chat. It was really encompassing from technologies, but not only, also relate to leaderships and skill set. I think we managed to build kind of like an understanding of what's going on in the energy sector and what are the opportunities for traditional companies to reinvent themselves. And so for this, I really wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank you for the availability, for the work at Huawei. That definitely is very interesting. For our listeners, potentially, just leave your contacts out there, and how can people reach you in case they liked it? We're also going to put on the links in the notes of the episode.
No problem. They can find me on LinkedIn. If they refer to this podcast, then I know where it's coming from, and I will accept the invitation. My Twitter handle is @Edwin Diender. Follow me, and I'll follow back. I'll be at MWC in Barcelona at the end of February, early March, if people want to hook up there.
Yeah, we're going to publish the episode in a couple of days, so I think we'll give time for people to meet up you there.
I guess so too. So
amazing.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Edwin. We really enjoyed it as well. Great conversation. And to the listeners, thank you so much for making it till the end of the episode, and see you in the next episode of RePerception. With many other guests, we will leverage on their knowledge to better understand the world of Web3, AI, and the opportunities they bring for traditional businesses. See you in the next episodes.